Question for starters about the slate you're proposing, the nominees. None of them have any rail experience.
Yes.
How do you think that makes them worthy of sitting on the Canadian Pacific board?
Sure. Actually, had the company, one of the first things we told the board is that there was no railroad experience on the board, and they brought on 2 executives fairly shortly thereafter to improve the board. 2 rail executives on the board plus a new CEO is plenty of railroad experience. A railroad company, you don't want a board of railroad executives. You want a couple of directors with good railroad expertise, and I think we've got that. So we intentionally sought out people who had other diverse business backgrounds.
One of the focus areas of interest is the operating ratio, which obviously Mr. Harrison was famous for, at least driving it down when he was at CN. Do you think CP could ever get to a situation comparable to CN from an operating ratio standpoint, or is there some sort of structural inefficiency that prevents the company from reaching those levels?
Look, my best information on that comes from Hunter. He believes ultimately he can get to a very similar place. So we don't think there should be a meaningful gap in the operating ratios of the 2 rails.
Is it your sense that...
Actually, just let me elaborate on that.
Sure, go ahead.
The analysis that we did before we made this investment was precisely that. Right, we said, look, we have 2 companies that are remarkably comparable. It's rare to have companies as comparable as these 2 companies. Yet one has a vastly more profitable than the other. What is the cause, for that difference? Is there in fact structural reasons that prevent this rail from achieving its objectives? That was the analysis we did before we made the investment. Mm-hmm. Once we got comfortable that the differences were not material, or in fact, actually while people focus on structurally negative things, there are some negative things about CP versus CN. There's slightly higher grades in certain parts of the network. There are also benefits. The nature of the markets that they serve allows them to run so-called unit trains, which are more efficient to operate. Net-net, we felt there wasn't a material difference. And then we invested $1.3 billion, which means that we believed in our analysis.
Have you made any further investment recently, or are you standing...
Initially, we bought 12% of the company, and then we bought an additional 2-odd% of the company.
Right, but nothing since then?
No, we were a public filer, so if we had a meaningful change, we'd have to disclose it.
And you said you started working with Mr. Harrison in August? Is that,
August, yes.
And what relationship did you have with him? Was it contractual? Was he as an advisor to you?
Well, this is actually our first significant investment in a railroad. He's one of the experts of the industry, and we hired him to help understand the business.
Did you consider, or did you seek out Paul Tellier, who also had a pretty good track record at CN?
No.
You felt Mr. Harrison was the best person?
Paul Tellier did a fabulous job, but Hunter was really the railroad operator, and we wanted to understand the operational issues that would help explain the differences between CP and CN.
Now, from a company standpoint, I believe Mr. Harrison alluded to some potential downsizing. Is it your view that the size of the workforce is adequate at this point? What needs to be changed for it to become more efficient?
We think the change that needs to happen is largely a cultural one. Hunter's talked a lot about that today. I'd rather not step into his shoes as CEO and tell you how to do that. That's why we're bringing him on. But I think we're good at picking talent, giving them the right incentives, and getting out of the way. I guess it's probably the best way to describe what we do in terms of a situation where we bring in a new CEO to a company, and that would be what we intend to do here.
One of the structural moves that CP made over the years, and you allude to it in your presentation, I believe calling it a mistake, the DME acquisition.
Yes.
Is that something, assuming Mr. Harrison was brought in, that could be reversed? And would you consider that an asset that could possibly be sold at some point?
Well, it's certainly going to be one of the things that Hunter is going to analyze when he gets there. From the outside, it does not look like this was strategically a smart decision. It's clear they overpaid. The question is, that's in the future. Mm-hmm. Are there changes that can be made that make that a more important asset, or is it more valuable to someone else and we'd rather take that capital and redeploy it in another part of the business?
Now there are some options, I believe, that come with that asset as far as...
Yes.
Can you expand on what the situation is?
Sure. The company acquired an asset and then has options to expand the asset into the Powder River Basin. But as Hunter talked about today, that's a market with two very strong competitors, and the capital costs of the expansion are very large. So again, something that needs to be analyzed closely, but even the company today, I think, does not believe that it makes economic sense. Those options are out of the money, if you will. They don't make sense to exercise today.
If I could just step back for a moment, I think you alluded to one of your contacts in the Canadian establishment today, saying that this was one of the persons who suggested a board member to you.
Yes.
Is there perhaps an element of nationalism in some of the reactions that you've seen once you came out and filed and said that you're pushing for change at CP?
I think that the shareholders understand what this is about, and I think there was maybe one article in the press initially that tried to describe it as a takeover, perhaps by an American of a Canadian institution. But what we're doing here is we're not doing that at all. This is not a takeover. It's not even a change of control of the board. All right, we're putting up a slate of 5 directors. 2 are American. The 3 independent directors are Canadian. I had no previous business or personal relationship with them before I brought them on. What we want to do is infuse fresh blood, new perspectives into the board, get a mandate for shareholder change. But we'll have 2 of 13 or 15 directors. That's proportionate to our 14% stake in the company, and nothing will happen without the full board's consent. Look, I have lots of business and some personal relationships in Canada, and I think people understand this is about what's best for Canadian Pacific, and actually what's best for Canadian Pacific is actually what's best for Canada. And it's a very important part of the infrastructure of the country, and if this can be a more efficiently operated, better performing railroad like CN, that's obviously a benefit for the country. It's also, by the way, not just a Canadian asset. If you look, meaning decent part of their operation, the minority is in the United States. But we understand the importance of the institution, and we're excited to own a piece of it.
Just 2 more questions.
Is there now one of the situations that particular to Canada is the weight and the influence of the domestic pension funds, some of which are large shareholders of CP. Have you reached out or talked to any of them as you prepared this
Yes.
this push? And what sort of guidance did you get from them? What sort of exchanges?
I think they believe that the changes are necessary. I would say they'll be quite supportive. I don't think there will be a shareholder who will oppose improving the performance of this company.
And in your view, perhaps to finish on this, when should people expect to start seeing, assuming you succeed in your bid to install Mr. Harrison as CEO, when could shareholders expect to see changes at the company?
Immediately. Hunter wants to get started tomorrow. So he's prepared and ready to go. He'll hit the ground running. I mean, he doesn't need to learn French there's a story about him starting a meeting saying bonjour. So he said actually Calgary would be an easier environment for him, and he has the benefit, of course, of having run the competing railroad for years, and also the benefit of understanding the U.S. portion of the operation, relationships with the unions and the union leaders, an understanding of the customer base, the benefits of having competed against the railroad for years. So he's the most prepared CEO to take this job, and he's not sitting around, I would say.
All right, Mr. Ackman, thank you for your time.
Sure, thank you very much.